Without doubts, I think it's by far the best league in the world.
How dare you score like that in the Premier League?
Mission accomplished in the Premier League. The American.
Nostalgia.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Premier League panel show. For those of you who are following American Scouser TV, you're probably sick of seeing my face today because this is the third time. Not to mention sick of hearing my coughs today because I'm still sick. I guess what? 20 hours has not changed anything. But Shay and I over here are sucking it up. Brought to you by Dayquil. This episode is going to be brought to you by Dayquil over here. We might have Jake jump on with us and Ayo representing Spurs and United, but we have Jamie with Chelsea, Shay with Villa, and Glenn with Brentford. Welcome aboard, gentlemen. There's a lot to get to. So we'll do the usual. I think we'll start with the match week, go through the games, and then there's a couple of talking points that I want to get your guys' take on. I mean, I honestly, most of it was going to be about Spurs and United. So either they're going to hop on or we're going to be talking behind their back. So one way or the other, we're going to talk about it. There's no running away from it. But let's get to the games, the match week that we just left behind. Newcastle 1, Bournemouth 4. When we come to the standings, I do want to come back at this because obviously Bournemouth is now, it's been weird. It feels like every 3 or 4 weeks we're like, they're the surprise team. And then they collapse, somebody else pops up and stuff. But we'll talk about that. West Ham 0, Crystal Palace 2. That new manager smell did not last very long. Brentford 0, Liverpool 2. Glenn, you joined our actually post-match and kind of like gave your take on the situation overall. But we'll take it for here. And I do want to look at, once we go through your guys' games, we're like just way past the halfway point. At one point in the season, we were like, that's how we came about anyway. We're talking about Brentford. They're like, hey, they can make a run and stuff. And Alex poo-pooed it. So we went and found you as the president to represent. But what do you make of that game? Obviously, you know, like I said, we talked about in the post-match and where Brentford is right now.
Yeah, it's a good game, wasn't it? It was really enjoyable, I'm sure, for the neutral. We fought really hard. We pushed you right until the end of the game. It wasn't easy 3 points for Liverpool at all. You were made to really, really fight for every point you won. And from a Brentford perspective, lots of fantastic individual performances. For us, there were 5-6 man of the match contenders within our own team, which was great. Van den Berg, Collins at the back. Keane Lewis-Potter kept Salah relatively quiet, which not many left-backs have done this season, let alone a converted winger. And then, midfield, Norgard bossed it. Damsgaard was creative as usual. And, I think the frustration for us is we just couldn't get, as we mentioned on the post-match, we couldn't make enough clear-cut chances. We really struggled to make the breaks work, to make some of the nice intricate football work. We never really troubled Alisson throughout the 90 minutes enough. And then because we didn't get on the scoreboard, I was sure, most fans were sure that, Liverpool were going to get a couple goals. Now, I said on this show last week that 0-0 was the only result it wasn't going to be. So I was shocked when it came, 90 minutes came round. And I was like, we got to play that clip back next week. Sadly for us, obviously there were a couple of goals from who else but Darwin Nunez, a added time brace. But, reflecting on it, really strong performance. We played very well against Man City as well. And I think our biggest regret is we only have 1 point to show from 180 minutes of really, really good quality Premier League football. And we don't really have barely anything to show for that. And honestly, that's been the story of our season against the top teams. We've played well against so many of you guys at the top, Arsenal being the exception when we were thoroughly beaten. And, we just haven't been able to convert good, strong performances going toe-to-toe with the big boys with actual points. And I think looking forward, that's probably where we are in the table. Our dominant home form is slightly slipped away now. A couple of defeats at the G-Tech, that kind of aura's dissipated. And, you look at our squad, you look at the teams around us, there's quality teams behind us and above us. And I think halfway through the season, mid-table's about right. Top half would be fantastic, but I think those European dreams are going to remain dreams this season.
So just says kudos to Shay, brave enough to come on this.
We got a point.
Unlike Ellen and the next.
It was a win in my books.
Alan is not here, obviously, because Arsenal lost points. It just kind of goes without saying. And I'm not even going to post it on Discord anymore. I'm going to assume if they win, he's going to show up. If they lose, he's not going to show up, kind of a deal. But no, I think he said he might be able to hop on, but I don't think he made it. But yeah, I mean, for Liverpool's point of view, I mean, we talked about it in the post match on this channel throughout. I thought it was well deserved at the end when you take 37 shots, just could not convert. But hey, in the past, we've lost titles by a point and stuff like that because of silly points lost like this. So I don't care if it's 95th minutes, first minutes, whatever, you get those goals. It was good for Nunez to get the goals as well because that kind of brings an additional boost when we insert them off the bench. That kind of gives them some kind of a confidence, hopefully. But yeah, big 3 points. When the Forest game was a draw, I was really feeling like we needed 4 out of the 2 tough away games. So when the Forest game was a draw, this was a must win. I was actually shocked that Brentford played so defensive. I was more worried about this game because I thought Brentford would be more like braver, and that would be harder to defend because you guys are good on the attack. But when they sat back and just allowed us to come in wave after wave, you knew, and I think that's when the depth comes in, right? You know, you bring on players like Elliott and Nunez and stuff like that, and you can refresh so you send Nunez to an already tired Brentford defense as opposed to the original Nunez to French defense. But yeah, I talked way too much about Nunez today, so I'm not going to go into that. Let's go back on this over here. Leicester City 0, Fulham 2. Leicester City is going downhill even faster than I think when Root took over. Arsenal 2, Villa 2. So I'll be honest, Shay, when we finished the game the way we did, and the way we won, I was like, man, this is a huge boost for Villa because nothing is more demoralizing than Arsenal thinking, all right, we win this game and we close the gap. And then they're like, shit. Like, even if we win this game, I figured that'd be demoralizing. They take the leads. What's changed? Is it Arsenal? Is it Villa that made the difference in tying that game?
I would say a little bit of both. I mean, watching that match, they dominated the whole time, the whole first half. You know, I saw that first goal go in. I was like, here we go. This is just how it is if we get down one, because we let in goals too early. A lot of the matches happened again today against Monaco, and we couldn't do anything. But once I got that second one, I was like, the normal 2-0, but then how my friend said when we were watching the match, like 2-0 is probably the worst lead in all of soccer because, you get lackadaisical. And then we get that goal 5 minutes later, and we just turned it back on, even though they still dominated the entire match. But it was just the perseverance that they had that second half. So I don't know what Emery told them. He probably said, hey, give me a point out of here so we can keep this streak against Arsenal going and ruining their title hopes, obviously. Just keep adding that fuel to the Emery hate. But it turned out to be better than I expected, just because I wasn't expecting them to, have the nerve to come back, just because of the last few weeks away from home, we are not we've been terrible. And just the injuries have started to mount up. I know we've talked about it even last week. I was talking to Glenn. It's just the injuries are piling up. We're running out of bodies, and we don't have the legs to keep playing these games. Like, I think the last 3 matches we played have all been away from home. So the team and the players have not been in Birmingham for the last 3.5 weeks. So that takes a toll on the body. But they're professional at the end of the day. This is their job. They should be able to handle this. They get paid the big bucks for it. But it was really nice to see because, once again, they thought they were going to run away with it. Then Twitter obviously had a complete meltdown on Arsenal, and just, no offense to Alan and my friends that are Arsenal fans, but they are absolutely miserable on Twitter. It's one of the worst fan bases I have seen. And I feel like they all have the same talking point. I swear, like, every tweet I saw was the exact same tweet. It was just, hey, this is a handball on Havertz, and then they slowed it down. You have all the evidence showing against it, and they just were in denial of it. So it was good to see.
Quick, let's do a poll over here. I mean, let's count Shay and me as biased, but Glenn, is that a handball?
No, I don't think it is.
Really? Okay. Okay. Do you think it did not touch the handball, or do you think, because there's a lot of stuff, and I was actually talking about this, I think this morning or yesterday, where I'm going to start referring. The toughest part is going to be there are some rules that I just don't freaking agree with. So do you think I don't think it should be handball, but by rule I thought it touched his hand. Do you think it didn't touch his hand, or do you kind of think man, that should not be a handball.
I agree with you. I think that's probably where I lean towards, and it's tough when you have black and white laws of the game, right? Yeah. That don't necessarily allow for that nuance. So I would completely agree with you there. So I guess therefore, letter of the law, then perhaps I'm actually a yes, it was. But I think it's interesting that we have this lack of discretion, and there's these gray areas. We always get this for penalties, disallowed goals. You know, you talk about what percentage of the body's offside, right? That's a huge gray area at the minute. It shouldn't be. I think that it was a really compelling conversation because I could definitely see both sides.
How about you, Jamie? Handball or not?
It's one of those where if it's against your team, you see it probably a little differently. I think it probably was a handball, but I'm also like both of you. I don't think I know the rule very well. Like, what I grew up as handball is no longer handball, and then it's changed and then it changes back. So like the threshold for a handball and what is not is a gray area. So when it goes to VAR, I tend to just sit there and say, okay, I'll accept whatever's coming.
To be fair, I mean, it's changed.
Growing up, it was from here to here.
I'm not disappointed.
That's how it is when we all grew up playing soccer. I feel like that's still the rules everywhere else, but they just can't.
I think like basically what they call as an advantage, what's not, has changed a little bit, but ultimately the rule, I think by rule, if it gives you an advantage to score a goal, which obviously it did because it creates deflection, it shouldn't be. Is it harsh? Because like going back to what Jamie's saying, I know what you mean, where if it's against your team, I think if it was against us, like I know Mo shoots and it has like, of all people, it would probably be Nunez. Nunez's elbow and it goes in or something like that. I'd be like, yeah, that sucks. That rule is stupid, but by rule, I guess it is what it is, kind of a thing. I just don't agree with the rule, but by rule, it is a handball. But yeah, there was definitely a lot of crying over that. I will go back to the standings. Obviously, not a good day for you guys in the Champions League today either. So we'll talk a little bit about that because I find Villa one of those mystery teams, because Villa was one of those teams that everybody put in the top 4 earlier, then it was like middle, then it was top 4 again, so it's kind of like gone up and down. But let's finish up the games over here. Forest 3, Southampton 2. Forest keeps plugging along, and actually that's probably the most they scored in a while over there, so good on them, I guess. I still don't see them as title contenders, but I mean, for them, nobody expected them to be. We have a lot of contributors that when we did our preseason projections had them being relegated and stuff. So to be where they are is kind of amazing. Speaking of being where they are, being kind of amazing, Everton 3, Spurs 2. Jake is in hiding. If he does join us, I mean, that is a big dilemma right there. Where Tottenham is in standings is kind of shocking because I don't think any of us thought they will be there. Io is going to be joining us shortly. He just messaged. We'll ask him about the worst United team of all time. 1, Brighton 3. I mean, that was kind of abysmal. We were kind of like watching that along with my brother, who is a United fan. And yeah, it's for a United fan. I'm sure Io will agree, but it's kind of like a painful watch. It's almost like you got to strap him to a chair and put him in front of the TV or something like that for him to watch it. But Ipswich 0, City 6. The fear mongering of here comes Manchester City has started. Let's go around real quick. Let me ask what you guys think about it. Jamie, we'll start with you. I feel like it's like a ridiculous overreaction. It's Ipswich. They do have some pieces coming back. They will be better than what they were, but I do not see City going on a 15-game winning streak. Are they back?
It's not out of the question. I don't think they're back, though. I think they are. That was more of a Manchester City performance, albeit against lesser opposition. Putting 6 past them will do wonders for their confidence. They are outsiders for the title. I think it's Liverpool. I think you're 12 points clear of them with a game in hand. It's yours to lose. But I am wary of them for Champions League spots because ultimately Chelsea play them, so we're up against City. You would expect Forest to falter kind of towards the end of the season, but if Chelsea have sights on finishing the top 4, we're going to want to finish as close to Man City as we can.
Yeah, the good news for teams around in that neck of the woods, underneath over there, is the fact that the 5th spot might most likely be enough for Champions League now. So that opens the door wide for I guess for a bigger window of teams, because there's a lot of teams that are close over there. Shay, is City back? Should we be worried? Because I already have paranoid. I think for Liverpool, it's more PTSD than anything else at this stage. But are they back? Can they make a run?
I don't know if they're back, but I agree with Jamie said. This is going to do wonders for the confidence. Signing Holland to a honestly crazy deal. Like the fact that he signed for 10 years is insane to me. Because I always thought, he'd be done after 2 or 3 years just because he wants to play in every league and dominate, which he can. I figured one of the Spanish clubs would have come in after him. Obviously, we talk about Barcelona not having money, but they would have done some voodoo somewhere to get him there, and he would have taken over Lewandowski's role. But just to see him get the goal and then them just kind of looking like the classic City, I think this weekend, Jamie said, against Chelsea, if they are able to pull that win off in a convincing way, if they do it, which obviously I'm going to be rooting for Chelsea, then we can have the conversation of like maybe not enough to get to the title, but finish in that third spot, potentially finish second. But I just still think there's a lot of moving parts that they haven't got back yet. They're still missing the main. I forgot what was his name. I just went blank on his name, but they're missing him.
Rodri.
Yeah, missing Rodri still. I think that has hampered them. I know Glenn and I talked about it last week. They're not the same without him, and I do think Pep dealing with his personal issues and stuff. That's when it comes time for that, it may affect him some more. We've seen it. He's got his mind's on other things he's having to deal with too. So there's a lot of stuff that is processing internally. But they have also signed 2 new players, so maybe they come in and do something. I doubt it, just because they're kids for the future that they have signed, so they're not going to come in right away. Yeah. But I think next week against Chelsea, hopefully Chelsea pulls it off. The win yesterday was really well. I want to watch that game with my friends. So, Chelsea, for all their what do you call it? Inconsistency. People know like Nicholas Jackson, just he was really good there, had a purple patch, and then kind of went back to the normal Nicholas Jackson. So they just have to be more clinical. But I can see them finishing maybe 4th or 5th. Hopefully, how you just said that 5th position is going to be very tough, because we looking at Villa's standings, we're only 4 points from that position too. So everybody in that from 5th to 10th are like a game away. So
yeah,
it's going to end up being a very tight finish at the end, which is nice because for the neutral fan and for fans of us, in the smaller clubs, it's going to be fun to watch.
I mean, I think we're going to find out about City really fast over here, because they do play PSG tomorrow away, a game they really have to win.
Yep.
And then they play Chelsea, and I think their next game, if I'm right, is Arsenal.
Yeah,
I mean, they play Club Brugge in the Champions League, but then they go away to Arsenal. So we're going to find out about them really fast over here if they're for real.
Like I said, they got a hard little group of games. So this will prove if they are able to pull it off, then we can have that conversation of maybe they turn.
I agree.
Hopefully not, because for us as neutrals and neutrals as the game and of our own clubs, we don't want them to see it, because finally City's kind of just.
Yes, I mean that was a fun ride, but hey, I wouldn't mind it if they tripped Arsenal along the way over here as well and helped the cause. Okay, so if you are watching us right now on YouTube, on Facebook, hit the like button or head on over to YouTube, give us a follow right there. If you're on YouTube, give us a like, a thumbs up, and everything. And most importantly, screenshot the shit, because we need receipts. So screenshot this, because I will be saving it, Mateusz. The Polish Prince from Monday mornings. Holland will still leave, which I do agree, but I do like the timeline there. I'm going to go to Google Calendar right now and put 2028, because 100 McNuggets on the show will be an interesting watch. The last time we had a challenge like this, Anand was eating a box of donuts and had the genius move of getting the cakiest, crappiest donuts ever on the way back from the grocery store. So it was an ugly scene, but yes, I hope they will screenshot that, took the receipts. Mateusz himself is Mr. Receipts on Discord. So yes, please take a receipt screenshot of that. Glenn, is City back?
I think, as you guys touched on, we're going to know by the end of February, because to continue your fixture list, following Arsenal, we got a FA Cup game they'll win, Newcastle, then Liverpool, then Tottenham. And Tottenham are a bit of a bogey team. That's the only reason I include them. Obviously, we'll talk about them more later. But Liverpool at home, Newcastle is at home as well, and they're nowhere near as good away from St. James's. But they are going up against some of the best clubs in Europe, literally now until the end of February. So it's quite funny. They score what combined 14 goals against Salford and Ipswich, and everyone's like celebrating. It's like, yeah, we know, we expect that. And honestly, I would glean more from them shipping 2 goals against us in the last minutes. That is actually a result that stands out as more indicative of their situation and their season, to be honest.
Some people have totally forgotten that. Like, it was last week.
Literally last week.
Like, just focused on, did you see what they did? Did you see what they did last week? I mean, that's the difference, I think. Before, when that would be another 5-0, 6-0 game. Right? Yeah. The Brentford game would be another 5-0 with the old City. I think that's like the biggest difference right now, is the fact that they can give up those goals. I know Ruben Diaz coming back and stuff like that will kind of help the cause. I don't see the new kid they signed and stuff making an impact. Marmoush might, attacking wise, but I mean, it takes every player some time to get used to the Premier League, not to mention City's style of playing and stuff like that, especially coming from Bundesliga. That's another ordeal. But let's go back and get to Jamie's boys. Chelsea 3, Wolves 1. I only ended up watching about like 20 or so minutes of this. Are you getting more and more optimistic with Chelsea's chances?
I wouldn't say optimistic. Maresca was proved right, I think, over the Christmas period. We are who he said he was, or we are who he said we were. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not capable of really closing out games. And we had a string of draws. This was really, or losses, draws. This was the first time we put 3 points on the board in quite some time. And it was also the first time in memory that Chelsea lost momentum and were actually able to gain it back. So I think that's progress. I don't think our chances are necessarily up. I guess it depends what your perspective is. I think getting in top 4, yes. I think this is getting right back on track and giving us some confidence heading into the Man City game. Our wingers and forwards aren't necessarily firing all cylinders. So in order to beat City, I think we are going to need that. We had to rely on goals from defenders and Mark Cucurella for contributing. I think Wolves may regret just letting him have the ball because they thought he was just going to give it to them if they gave him the ball enough, and then he came back to put us ahead. And then Madueke made sure that Chalobah didn't score on his debut to win. I hate it when players do that. There's a good and a bad side, right? Good, make sure no one's going to clear it off the line, make sure it goes in. But I swear more times than not, you see that the player is offside, and then the goal doesn't count. So I was like, don't you dare! But thankfully went in. I think we didn't play great, to be honest. Palmer was off; he was struggling with an ankle injury all week, so wasn't quite there. It was really good to see Trevor Chalobah back in the team. Wasn't sure he'd start, but based on the defensive injuries we have, he obviously did. Him and Reece James both pinged the ball around pretty well. We used the width, and we were pretty dangerous on the wings. Madueke was dangerous without really looking like doing anything. One of those games. But I mean, 3 goals, XG of just over 3. Sanchez gift for Wolves. I think that ultimately we're never going to keep a clean sheet. It would seem. The only concern I have is injuries in the middle of the park. Even though Fernandez is worth half what we paid for him, he's a body who is used to Maresca's system in the middle of the park. I thought Dewsbury Hall did okay coming in, but Caicedo is playing 90 minutes every game and went down with what looked like a pretty painful injury. We don't have too many other defensive players, with Lavia having another injury, Enzo being out, and half our team being on loan elsewhere. So
I was going to say, good thing you guys have 50 people on the squad.
It seems like we're not gonna recall Santos because he's doing very, very well at Strasbourg and also has never played a Maresca system. And Ugachukwu, while he was part of the squad, he's now playing minutes for Southampton and playing pretty well. So it seems like we're just going to try and string it out, probably because we aren't really going to contend for the title. But
so let me ask you, and we're going to circle back around, but we'll start with you since you have the mic. In terms of the January window, will Chelsea sign even more players, or will they roll with what they have, knowing they already have some excess fats?
You could potentially see us buy a midfielder. But I think we're more likely to let a few players go than really acquire players. I'm choosing not to count when Chelsea buy a player who's 17 and then leave him at his parent club for 2 years. And while it technically is a transfer, I'm not really counting that. I don't think our squad will be too changed.
Okay. How about you, Shay? Speaking of Shay, I know I was going to ask you actually about this off air, but since we're talking transfers and stuff like that, today my hometown club of Fenerbahce bought Diego Carlos for like 10 million or something like that. Who the old Diego Carlos is great, was great. The one I think he came from La Liga, right?
Yeah,
And he was like highly sought after and stuff like that, has the speed and all that kind of stuff. One, what kind of a center back did my team end up with? Two, a team that has depth issues, is that basically funds for going signing other people, or are they losing even more depth?
Yeah, it was. So when he came in, I had high hopes just because he was one of those stalwarts at Sevilla. He was just a big body, your typical big center back from Brazil, just had the flair, the pace. And I think I think that was the year the year before it was Ming's first game, blew his ACL out. We lost our main center defender. Then we bring in Diego. First match, blew his Achilles out. So I think that hurt him tremendously because he lost that little bit of touch. And then just some of the games he came on, he was so lackadaisical. So he was probably the most infuriating player to watch because against Arsenal and City, played like a world-class center back. So for those 3 matches, he looked every bit of the deal, put in the best performances we've seen, but would play Newcastle, would play Leicester, and just look absolutely terrible. So I think even Emery was over it. And then I think there was some internal bust-ups too between him and Emery. They kind of got into it. So he kind of just, basically pushed him aside, even though we had our issues. He was like, I'm not going to play a player that, they're butting heads. Obviously, like I said, with the injuries that we've had to center backs, with Mings coming back after a year, was very tough. I would like to see him play, but it was really hard to give him the benefit of the doubt of watching him just, let in lackadaisical goals. He'd get caught out all the time too. Like there'd be so many lazy plays where they would just run right behind him. He would just kind of turn and look, and then Konsa or whoever was paired up to him would just get caught out, and he would just let in the goals. Selling him for 10 million is obviously a loss. We bought him for 30, so we lost 20 million pounds on him. But I think they are basically bringing in the guy that replaced him at Sevilla. So it's just kind of funny. Sevilla's probably not too happy with Villa at this point. Like, hey, you keep taking our center backs. But the guy that's coming in, I think Emery has rated him. Same with our scouting. Like they wanted to bring him in. He's another big body defender. And I think him working with Powell is going to help. I think he is right-footed, so you have Powell left foot. The new kid coming in, hopefully, is right-footed, so they can kind of play off each other. I think he will do really well for Fenerbahce, just because the league is not going to be as the same. He can probably take as much time as he needs to, that like he was, accustomed to playing. I think he'll do well, but don't expect him to keep putting in, top 10 performers all the time. You will.
Yeah, great. We get another injury-ridden center back added to the round.
He had a lot of he could ping the ball. I'll say that. He's very good at getting it to the wide players from just one touch. Is really nice, but it's just don't expect a 30-something-year-old center back coming off a huge injury to be lights out.
Mourinho will set him straight, I'm sure. Do you anticipate a lot of action for your boys? Do you think you need, or is there people out there that can kind of come in and do the job? I also read somebody is it West Ham going after Duran?
So West Ham are trying to go after Duran, and they keep lowballing us. And just the fact that they think that they can come in with a lowball offer, and he's just going to leave to go to that team right now would be kind of crazy middle of the season, especially when he's playing Champions League right now. Like I don't see somebody that would want to leave when you still have the opportunity to play in the Champions League. Wait till the season's over if you really want to decide to do that. But we also signed him to a long-term contract too. His contract just got extended to 2030. And I think the club has said if anybody wants to come after a minimum 60 to 65 million, obviously, we finally have some power. Like we don't have to sell off our assets without the league interfering. Obviously,
work that because of the built-in headache he kind of can bring.
I mean, it's good and bad. I like it just because he's a firecracker. Like he's just a kid, and he kind of wants to do what he wants to do. So he's still a little immature in some ways. But then that's also why he's scoring these crazy goals, because he just does what he wants to do. he's definitely the definition of a maverick striker. So I think that's why everybody was enamored with him. Like all the clubs, everybody kind of wants him because, you put him on there. Like I've called him Captain Chaos. He comes in at the 70th minute and you don't know what he's going to do in the next 20 minutes. You saw early in the season, he scored 5 games in a row. He's scored the craziest goals from nothing. So he does what he wants to do. And I think we realize that, we have something in him that could be the future, but obviously you can't just bench Ollie Watkins. Like he's been the most consistent English striker in the league the last 2-3 years. We're not just going to get rid of him like that. So if somebody does come in, it'll either be for a big money move. I just don't see West Ham being the club he goes to. Like maybe Arsenal will finally, do what they're supposed to do for years and buy a striker, or, City do it if they get rid of Holland in 2028, whatever Matu said, but minimum, they better not sell him for less than 65, even if he does kind of have a dip, because we have all the player power at this point.
So where does Villa end up? 8th right now in the table, 36 points. I mean, only 2 points basically from if the 5th spot ends up being the Champions League. Do you guys make the Champions League, you think?
I think so. Like, I know we lost today, but we play Celtic next. If we beat them, we guarantee a round of 16. So that's nice. It's huge steps of the club, like making progress. Like, literally 4 years ago, we're in the championship. So this is uncharted territory for us, and I love watching it. I think Emery said it today too. He's just there's tired legs. He said even the players today, it was little mental lapses. He's like, they just got to get more focused. And I know that he was frustrated today with just the lackadaisical performance. And he didn't sugarcoat it. He was like, they just didn't do what they needed to do. I think if we bring in maybe 1 or 2, we need depth. That's truly what it comes down to. And obviously January is always the seller's market, or I think we get more sellers than it is buyers. So you're going to have to pay extra. I do think them making us sell Luiz and Diaby has hurt us because we haven't been able to truly replace them. Like Onana's been great, but he's been very injury prone, which is crazy for somebody that's 23 years old
and that big.
That big to get hurt all the time. So that has hurt us. And then just missing Luiz, just having those assists. Like he scored, I think 7 or 8 goals for us. And like we haven't had. I think Yuri's the only one that's basically scoring for us at this point. So I could see us just kind of faltering between that 6th and 8th. If we can push for the 5th, I'd be very happy. But then also, if we keep making it in the Champions League, it's anybody's tournament this year. I really don't see a true favorite, because even Real Madrid's they've been a little bit wishy-washy, and I think they're having manager issues right now. I don't know if it was true or not. They said who's their coach was getting ready to leave it.
Then he came out and said he's staying for 4 years or something.
They don't know. So truly, it could be anything, and we have a favorable rest of the schedule for the Champions League. It's just the injuries we have.
I think that has made this part has made. I'm sure UEFA is just loving this, but the playoff round is definitely what not anybody expected before we headed into it, because you're going to have teams if they make it. That's another comedy by itself that there's an if, but you're gonna have PSG in there, you're gonna have City in there. So nobody expected those teams to be in that bracket. You would think they would be up on top 8, and then everybody else would fight to meet them, kind of a deal. But how about you, Glenn? Any movements? I know I think Frank was talking about depth and stuff like that, saying what we can bring in, kind of the realities of Premier League kind of deal in terms of what Liverpool can bring onto the pitch compared to Brentford. Does Brentford stay put and hope that they don't lose anybody and keep the squad they have?
Yeah. Great question. So we're close to signing Michael Coyote, I think his name's pronounced, from Fiorentina, which is really exciting. A young, quality right back, exactly the position we've been so vulnerable in the season with Aaron Hickey out with a long-term injury. So he's in the Juve academy, and he scored the winner against Portugal in the Under-19 European Championship final just a year or 2 ago. So he's really exciting. Now, him joining the club and probably becoming first choice pretty much straight away would mean Mads Ruslev, who's been playing there, would possibly be let go. He's been linked with a couple of clubs away. Might be a move to Serie A potentially, which honestly would probably be a good thing. He works hard. He's a decent player, but it's clear that his quality, his ceiling, seems to be lower than most of the other squad, and he's very error prone. So that would be great. We've had Johan Wissa is being chased once again. I think from Nottingham Forest keep trying to lowball us. which is quite funny. I think they might have offered 20 something this week, maybe up to 30, but maybe it was even less than that. But anyway, the offer they put on the table this week is nowhere near enough. And it's interesting because we're a selling club, right? Brentford are, we buy low, sell high. It's going to be really interesting because looking at the contract situation for a few players, I think Mbumo, Wissa, and Norgard are all with about a year left on their contract and could potentially be moving on. And now what Brentford wants to do is we want to buy players when they've got potential, get them up near peak, and then basically sell them when they're hitting peak, maybe just post that, maybe even Ivan Toney, for example, at least the direction he went. I'd be really curious if we got a huge offer. Like I know Liverpool have been looking at Brian Mbumo. I don't think that's going to happen this window. If we got what I'm wondering about this window is what is a money, what kind of money we can't refuse for either Yohan Wissa or Mbumo. Like what's that? Is that 50 for Wissa? Is that what for Mbumo? Like at what point does our business model and our structure for buying and selling, to what extent would an offer, not accepting that offer, contradict that? And I think that's the only thing I'll keep my eye on this window. But if we can get a better quality right back from Italy, wow, that'll be amazing. But yeah, just keep your eye on the Yohan Wissa stuff because he's in form, he's scoring for us. But is he at his max right now? Is he like a Chris Wood season where his conversion's crazy high and is totally unsustainable? Will he regress to the mean next season? And maybe we should sell him, even he's doing so much for us, if we get these kind of crazy deals. So that's what the Brentford fans are talking about at the minute with the transfer window.
And where does Brentford end up? It looks like they're leading the second pack right now more than anything else. I know it's only 5 points, but looking at that, oh look, United is there. But anyway, but looking at where you guys are at right now, but this is exactly, I mean, like I was joking about in the beginning, but this is exactly where right about I said, hey, they just played the 3 of the top teams. And even though they didn't get the points, now they're going to have easy fixtures. So they're going to start accumulating points again. Do you see that happening? Or is it going to be like the up and down Brentford now that home court advantage has kind of like gone away a little bit?
Yeah, I think up and down. We'll get to it. I think Crystal Palace away is a tricky fixture. They always give us a tough game. I don't like that. They've got so many good players that can hurt you, like Eze, Sarr, etc. Mateta's found some form, hasn't he, with that brace? I didn't realize until you showed the table that there's actually a 5-point gap between us and Fulham, team ahead of us, which Alex must love, of course. So I think you've summed it up, haven't you, perfectly, that we're kind of leading this second tier. We are quite literally leading the second half of the table in position and actually with that points gap as well. Yeah, I mean, I imagine we'll probably finish somewhere around where we are, maybe 12, somewhere between 13 and 11 would be absolutely fine. Obviously, you think teams like Spurs and United, like the quality will have to show. So both of them will probably end up overtaking us this season. You look at that, okay, we dropped to 13th. It's fine. It's a shame, as I said on the post game show, that we've kind of sacrificed cups at the altar of the Premier League because we're gonna finish lower mid-table, and we kind of threw away the FA Cup and we threw away the League Cup. And to me, it kind of feels like a season where it would have been nice to have a longer run. We had a longer run in the League Cup, reaching the quarterfinals. So it would be a shame to put out kind of your B team for them, pick up, 1 point in 2 games against the big dogs, and then we're kind of languishing mid-table. But hey, look at our squad, look at what we're doing with it. I'm not going to complain. It's just our business model, and it works, so that's fine.
I guess. Well, speaking of business models, that don't work. Let's bring Io on. Hey, thanks for waiting on hold over there, ma'am. But as we keep going down the table, it is now time to talk about United. Actually, I was going to talk about United based on like some of the things Amarim said and all that. So where are you at with United and the whole Amarim thing as of now? Especially when he says this is the worst United team of all time. I know he's trying to like just brush off all the pressure and stuff like that, but is it the worst United team of all time?
I mean, you see, my headline says championship might be fun, right? Because I've seen my I've seen my team win 11 titles. So like I've never played in championship before. Go to QPR, Old Kent Road. That might be fun, I'm being honest right now. It might be fun. Something I've never done before. We get a championship with a lot of coverage. All the media will watch all our games. Like that just might be fun. I've never seen that. Okay, that's me just joking. I'm just kidding around. I think
Well, you never know, but okay.
no, that's never happened. I think I think Amorim is doing a couple of things, right? I think, and I always say this every time with managers, whatever managers say in press conferences, take it with a pinch of salt. Every time, what they are saying, there's always something on the line that they're actually trying to do. So I suspect, we can only speculate. I'm not a mind reader. I suspect this is like trying to pressure the board to buy players, like it's just so, because when you say something that's very alarming and shocking, that's a headline like that, everybody reads it. Ratcliffe reads it. He said he met Ratcliffe, I think, after the Southampton game. They chatted. So, like, I suspect that was more like, whoa, pressure, to the board to buy players. That's what I think when he says that. Is this the worst United team? No. I mean, United, somebody said it, I think, if I joined, they have relegated, I think, 3 or 4 times in the past, like, 70s, early 80s, of course. Is this the worst in history, squad-wise? Possibly, I think. But I also think.
Do you think it is squad-wise? I mean, it's easy to pull up the numbers on points, conversion, blah, 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 and say mathematically they're the worst or whatever. But do you think squad-wise?
So when I say squad-wise, I like to clarify. I'm talking of like ill-fitting pass parts, right? Yeah, it's not like talent-wise in isolation. We still have some talented players, but just players that they don't mesh together. It wasn't built with like a clear structure of a style of play, over like maybe I said 2-3 managers now, mostly Ten Hag and Ole's players mostly are in there. So I think that's where the main problem is, right? So I don't think it's the worst. I think a lot of fans, either go too high or too low anytime when it comes to United. Like, oh, sell everybody, and I'll use, for example, James team, right? Just 2 years ago, they were 12th.
Yeah.
Chelsea were 12th just 2 years ago. And what have they added? In fact, this same team, most of this team was 12th at this stage last season, right? Halfway is the halfway time that they turned it around. From January, and that's when they started winning games and they turned it around. I'm not saying United is going to do that. My point is, when you have 1 or 2 problems in this current Premier League, there are too many smart and better teams in the middle table that exaggerates how bad you are, right? I know Glenn was talking about like Brentford, Fulham. There are so many teams now that have so much talent. Like the Premier League right now is not the Premier League of 5 years ago. Like everybody knows that. There's so much talent and the coaching is extremely good now. So anytime you have a couple of problems, once the top 16 has a couple of problems here and there, their fall gets exaggerated a lot, in my opinion, right? United are bad. I'm not saying we are bad, but we're not as bad as everyone is trying to make it look, in my opinion, right? So I think it's going to take a long time. It's a long rebuild, and I'm fine. I'm fine with it. I'm not too bothered like that. I think we're going to finish 9th, 10th, somewhere there. I think I said that like maybe earlier this season when I came on, and I still maintain that.
Okay, before I ask these guys about it, let me ask you: when you hear Amorim say that, is your reaction, "That's right, sing it, brother," or are you like, "Man, you don't want to say that shit"? Like, where are you at when you hear that, like your new manager that you're kind of putting hope on? I'm just wondering because I don't know. I think I'd rather take the honesty, but we live in a world where we want honesty, but we don't like it when we hear it.
Correct. I think the way I feel when he says that is my initial reaction was like, I hope he's not getting frustrated, because something that everybody's forgetting is come end of season, if the pressure is too much, he can walk. Amorim can walk. He can just like, I don't have to deal with this crap. I'm going. So he could work. I'm being honest. He could work. I've told. That's what I think can happen. That's a very big possibility. But that's how I felt when I first heard it. But the way I always like to analyze things, I took a step back. Right? I was like, okay, managers, this is what he's doing. He's just trying to pass pressure to the board. There's nothing in here. So I just let it. But now, what bothered it more was the report that came out after. I don't know if you guys have heard, where they say in the dressing room, like he was smashing TVs and he lost his temper. That bothers me more because that's unusual from what he does. Like when he came, he said he's always like, and just historically, everything I read about him, he's like one of those guys, even if you see him have a bad time, next day they'll analyze, they'll talk about what happened. his style, kind of like a Wenger. That's how Arsene Wenger was at Arsenal. That type of personality. That's what he. So now that he's doing this like hair dryer treatment, which is unlike his personality, that bothers me more, and that's what's worrying me about. Like, if the pressure gets too much, he might walk. I can see him walking. So.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know, right? When they hired them, maybe he would probably rather have come in the summer. Then why didn't they sign him in
He
the
said
summer?
it.
We kind of
He
like
said
talk
it.
about this, right? I mean,
He's-
if you were guys
he
going
said
to get
it.
him, why didn't you get him in the summer? So this
He
looks
said
like
it.
a panic move anyway. Now
Correct. Yeah.
you let Ten Hag buy half of Ajax and bring him over. Then you bring
Yeah.
this guy. It doesn't fit his system. So now he's probably going to bring half of Sporting Lisbon over there, and then you're going to like go all over. I think the biggest problem is to sign people, to bring people. But Shay, let me ask you, when Unai Emery comes out, especially when he first comes, and I think the fact that it's newer is worse, right? Like we've seen like a Mourinho rant and a Conte rant and stuff. It's always with Spurs somehow. But like we've all heard those, and you can kind of understand it because it almost feels like you can almost sense the frustration of the person. It's up to here kind of a deal. Whereas this is new. Like, what was your reaction when you hear? I mean, I chuckled, but I'm a Liverpool fan. So, what was your reaction when he says?
I mean, I liked it because I will die on this hill, and I've said it multiple times on the podcast, even when we started this a couple years ago. Soccer is the only sport where players are almost untouchable in a sense. They don't get cut. Rashford has been awful for the last 2 or 3 years on high wages. They can't get rid of him because nobody can afford him. If this was, I don't want it to be like American sports, but you don't do your job, you get fired. That's like it is for us. You don't do what you're supposed to do, you get let go. In soccer, they don't, so they're just there. And I think even Jose said it. And this is the man that's won Champions Leagues and titles. He said his greatest ever achievement was getting that United team, because it hasn't changed that much, to finish second. And they haven't improved on the squad. They brought in a couple players, but then they spent $100 million on Anthony. That was a complete waste. They've taken a bunch of. They've lost a lot of money on it. And like how Ayo said, the players, I don't know, they've gotten either too comfortable, they know that they suck, and then the morale has been down since Ferguson got fired. They just haven't been able to come back. And with the new manager, he's telling it to their faces because he's like, look, I'm tired of putting up with this. I was like, you did it with Ten Hag. He, kind of said the same things, but you didn't improve. He's come in, he's seen the same players not do anything different, and he's trying to get something out of them, but they're too. I don't know, like they're being unprofessional in a sense. Like I think now Garnacho is like, having hissy fits because the fans are on him. Like it's gonna happen when things don't go your way, the fans are gonna turn on you. But you as the player have to put in the effort to try to do better. And they haven't shown that. I feel like as much as I don't like Bruno Fernandes, he's literally been their only consistent player. And he's doing everything he can, and the rest of the team just not helping him out. Then when they sold McTominay, I feel like that was a player they should have just kept. Yes, he wasn't, but like he was like the glue for that team. Like he did everything. He wanted to play for United. He had that in his heart of like, hey, this is the team I want to play for. And they just haven't had that mentality with these players. I also agree with telling the owners, but I feel like that's been the issue for the last couple of years. The owners aren't going to spend the money. I don't feel like they could have, and they don't care because they're almost similar to the Dallas Cowboys. Y'all make too much money. They don't care. They're going to be positive. Like if they do get relegated, that may finally light a fire in them, but I'm pretty sure they know that they're still making millions and millions of dollars, that they're fine with what it is. They don't care about the fan base as much as they should. And, I saw that at one point when Villa were going down. We had terrible players and we couldn't do anything. We were we're selling everybody. The new owners come in, they finally steadied the ship. We did make a mistake hiring Gerrard, but then how you said, when Emery came in, same squad that Steven Gerrard had. We didn't really bring in any new players until later, and he got them to believe in the system, and they started producing. So maybe that's what he needs to do, but I feel like he's a firecracker himself as a manager because he's never had to deal with this in his career. At Sporting Lisbon, he was doing what he had to do because he got the best players that he needed and was able to do well at that league. But I just feel like the pressure is on. And I didn't realize he could walk away at the end of the season. That would just be devastating because what manager is going to come in right now and do, wants to truly take this job? Because it's proven to be, I hate to say it, a cancer, because nobody's going to be able to steady the ship without almost clearing out house. And obviously that's going to be near impossible because you can't just get rid of 22 players and bring in 22 players without going completely bankrupt. I don't think they're gonna get relegated. Like I said, there's quality on the team. They're not that bad. Like Everton is bad. Who's at the bottom of the table right now? Let me take 1 second.
I think the advantage that Spurs and United have is what's bad is really bad.
They have talent. Like they're not like Southampton. They're bad. Like they just don't have the quality of the to maintain in the league. United and Spurs have it. They just have lost all. I don't know, like faith in the system, or like they're not listening to the system. Spurs, he's been there for a while, but with this new coach at United, he's trying to implement it. They're prima donnas. I hate to say it, and I say like everybody knows they just they don't care, and like he's trying to get something out of them, and they're probably not comprehending it. Like him throwing a temper tantrum, they're probably like, "Oh my god, this guy's crazy! Like we don't want to play for him. He's already lost his head." When he's like, "No, I'm trying to get you assholes to play better, but you won't listen to me." Like. What do I have to do?
I mean, and I don't know if that's the situation, but maybe it's like Villa doing a better job of finding a replacement that fits the squad as opposed to.
And I think that's
maybe maybe like it's fit because it clearly doesn't fit. Like what he has really doesn't fit, like formation wise, player wise, and stuff like that. And I'm all for his honesty. I wish he was more honest in some ways. If you're gonna come out and say that. Because same as I feel like that is a message being sent. Well, if you're sending a message, might as well go out and say it and say, hey, we discussed that we have to do some stuff in January to get the process started or whatever. So at least lay it out in the open. But the issue that happens with United usually is, and this is why, when fans are like, sign him, sign that, extensions and stuff like that, you can't get rid of these contracts. So like they have a lot of guys they have to get rid of, but who's going to get them without United picking up a lot of the bunch? I mean, Jamie, you can't relate to this, except, I guess when you guys change managers, it doesn't matter the style because like it comes with like 50 new players and stuff. But
we're pretty good at selling players. I mean, we just flog them to Man United and Arsenal for a decent chunk.
Well, plus when you have connections in Saudi, that always helps the cause.
Yeah, that helps too.
So you can get like ridiculous money for like a deadbeat Koulibaly and stuff like that. But like, what do you think of where United, or like, you guys change managers like underwear for a little bit there. Like, if your new manager said that, like, what would your reaction be?
It's interesting because, like you said, it feels like a message. And do you need to use the media to deliver a message? You could just talk to the board, and maybe he thinks his position is in jeopardy after the slow start. But it also, judging by results and how they've played, it also seems like he's not trying to just figure it out this season. He's trying to figure out which players are going to fit his system, who he wants to let go. And realistically, that's probably going to happen in in the summer. But I think he may need to be a little more pragmatic than Big Ange Postecoglou. But it's very, very early days. Like United wouldn't have fired Ten Hag if it wasn't a dire situation. And bringing in a new manager, like, you're not expected to just turn it around completely with the same set of players. This is always going to be a long project. I think Man United, while Ten Hag was for decades, like Man United are a little more reserved when it comes to changing managers. They will give him a little more time to implement his system, and I think he deserves that. But I mean, for the neutral, it's quite funny watching them not get any better, at least for this season. But I know that Man United are no longer the Man United of 11 titles, as I have said. But I have no doubt that in the next year or two, they'll be back in Champions League contention. Like, they have the investment, they have the infrastructure, and like they're a top team. They may not be the top team, but they're a top team, and they'll get back there.
I mean, in some ways, Glenn, I like what he's doing, because a lot of managers might come in and say, new managers smell, and try to make the best of the ingredients. Go into the kitchen and try to make the best of the ingredients that they have in there. He's like, no, this is what I'm gonna cook. If we don't have salt, well, fuck, I guess we're not having salt in this shit. It's basically how he's like managing it. And in some ways, I kind of would prefer that, especially the whole, like United has been. It's kind of like a vicious cycle every 3 years. So it's almost a bit more refreshing, I think, to have a guy who comes in and says, you know what, I'm going to do my way. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, I'm still going to do my way.
Yeah, I agree. And Ralph Raniak said this years ago, right? This is nothing new. Nobody should be surprised. And it's interesting to take a step back for a moment and just think about some Man United icons. Like think about Ronaldo, Best, Giggs, Rooney, Scholes, Dennis Law, rest in peace, of course, Brian Robson. Like you think about the iconic players, even just in the Premier League era, you can add another 20 to that list. And you look at this Man United squad, I mean, Bruno Fernandes is maybe not in the upper echelon, but like he is a real servant of the club and he has real quality. Beyond him, you look at this entire squad. I don't think there's many people lacing the boots of the people, I just said in terms of real icons. Like it's such a pathetically threadbare squad. I've said it many times on this show. It's like recruitment has been a shambles at this club for years. They brought in all these Ajax players, as you said, to fit the style of a manager who was then fired a couple of months later. And yeah, if I'm Amarin, I am looking a bit fed up. He looks pretty frustrated, doesn't he? He's aged a lot in the last couple of weeks because, he's trying to play a style of play. And as you said, the kind of cooking metaphor is good. He's trying to cook a meal without the ingredients for it. Now, the question actually, I'd be interested to hear from our resident United expert would be, at what point is there any pressure on Amarim? Say the January transfer window is a bit disappointing, a bit underwhelming, or they don't buy that many players. At what point does he have to adapt and recognize till the end of the season he is stuck with the squad? They're not confident. They don't fit his style of football. At what point, with Big Ange in mind as well, does he have to slightly adapt when he realizes that the style of football he wants to play will not be facilitated by the squad at his disposal? At what point do we just stop complaining about recruitment and about the players and say, okay, you're the manager. You took this job. You looked at this squad. You shouldn't have come. You should have stayed until the end of the season if you thought this could have happened. At what point, I guess, does it become his responsibility as well? Because this goodwill is not going to last forever. And these are pathetic results. They're really, really dismal results.
Correct. And yes, I think one thing we have to remember is this was probably part of the sales pitch, right? For United going to get Amorim from Sporting. Like this season, they probably told him, now this is just speculating, but from what we can see, this season is a free hit, right? Try to figure out the players that fix your system, blah, blah, blah. As long as we don't get relegated, whatever, like it's fine. He just doesn't like losing because he says one thing, which is very important, right? At the end of the day, he needs to buy himself time to be there to do the rebuild. Because we know, like I think Jamie said, or I don't know, maybe Shailen said, you're not bringing 22 players. So even next season and the season after, I would say 30 to 40% of the players that are currently there are still going to be there. So you need to buy yourself time for them to believe in you, right? So I think to answer your question, I think that him adapting, I think he's trying to adapt. Because when people say adapt, people are expecting, go to the back four. We're terrible in the back four on that Ten Hag. Like when people say that, I laugh. Like we're terrible. It has nothing to do with the back four, in my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with that. He's trying to adapt. I think what he's trying to figure out is, okay, which player can play like a left wing back, who can play right wing back. If Ahmad goes down, like those kind of things that he's trying to change. Oh, can Euro play at the left center back, right? And that's how he's trying to adapt. And he has a settled 11-ish, but you can see that a lot of them are playing so much, they're tired. You can see it and his style of play requires a lot of like running back and forth because he says run like mad dogs. Like Jose used to say, he says that a lot. And it requires a lot of energy. So I don't think he's not trying to adapt in the sense that people are thinking. I think what he should do, in my opinion, is try and figure out how we can get more attackers on the pitch. That is my problem.
Yep.
If I have any criticism of Amorim, I think he plays too many defenders.
Yep.
If you're playing Arsenal, you're playing Liverpool, City, that's fine. That makes sense. But when we are playing like Southampton, you're playing, okay, Brighton, we don't have enough attackers. So because of that, we don't create enough chances. And that's the problem. And I think that's what he needs to figure out, how to get the few attackers he has on the pitch and less defenders in whatever system he wants to play. Right? I'm not asking him to change.
If it was like Mourinho, like if you play that many defensive players and you get a clean sheet and squeeze in a goal and get the 3 points, that'd be one thing. But they're still leaking goals despite playing like 7-8 defensive guys. Correct. Let me ask you this, Ayo, because we were talking about this on the podcast last night. I mean, January window, I honestly think like some of these offers that we talked about for, like Brentford players and like Villa players and stuff, I almost feel like part of it is PR. like teams saying like, see, we try to do something, but what they want is so expensive, and then like not do anything, because really it is a seller's market whenever you're in January. So this way everybody's happy. West Ham looks like they tried. Villa looks like, no, we don't sell our assets. So everybody is like, sweet, high five, and then they walk away. So for United, you probably last thing you want is spend another 67 and get a guy like Anthony probably.
Absolutely
But
not,
having said that, if you do not get rid of people on top of that, would fans be extremely upset? My theory yesterday was that even if you guys don't sign anybody, if you at least addition by subtraction, move Rashford or, move Garnacho, whoever you're going to move, whoever Amorim doesn't like and doesn't see in the plans, I think fans would be like, okay, at least we're going somewhere, addition by subtraction kind of thing. It feels like if it stays put, it's going to be like throwing Amorim under the bus, because now nothing is changing. And Fabrizio is going to do the same freaking post every 3 days saying Rashford is left out of the squad. So it's...
I think the reality is, right, you mentioned it earlier, it's the contracts, right?
Yeah.
The wages. We can't move Rashford because of those wages, right? And most people see United as being desperate, and they're probably offering like, oh, you pay 75%, let's pay 25%, right? Something ridiculous like that. And then they're like, no, we're not doing that, right? I think that's what's going on. There's a lot of back and forth regarding contracts. I am of the opposite opinion, because at the end of the day, you need bodies. We're still in Europa. We're still in the FA Cup, right? I think if you cannot buy anybody, you should not move anybody. I'm of the total opposite, in my opinion. Like, if you cannot move Rashford, like move him. You get Rashford back into the squad. He plays for United. Rashford is still our best attacker, or one of our best attackers, right? So, like, getting back in the squad, let him come on. We need bodies. Regardless of what anybody thinks, we need bodies to the end of the season, right? So I'm of the opposite opinion.
But do you want a pouting Rashford out there? I mean, Amorim is breaking TVs now. If he sees Rashford out there pouting, well, he's going to break the door going back into the locker room.
I think if Rashford gets back into the squad, I don't think he will pout, in my opinion. I think the other way. I think he will, like, be decent. Like, he's not going to be, like, just terrible. That's what I think, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, that's like an interesting.
Like that too. Like, you bring him back, and then he knows that he can probably see the writing on the door, and like, hey, let me put in a good shift for the last 6 months, and then people will say, hey, you still have it, because I mean, he's only 29, so I'm not saying he's fully done yet.
27.
No, 27. He's 27. He's still got a lot of years on him to still play at a high level, but maybe play, come out, and he has to do that personally. So that's why I say, mental thing, like they don't have it in their head. Or, hey, if you want to get out of the club, you need to prove it, then they sell you. But then that's where United in turn need to be like, all right, look, we want to get rid of him, let him play well, and then don't highball, because like that's what's going to happen. Say he plays really well towards the end of the year, and the clubs come start, like, oh, maybe we want to buy him. United has to finally realize, like, all right, he's 27 years old, get what we can get for him. Do not try to get more than he should. That way he's finally gone and off those wages. Then that frees up more money to go buy 2 or 3 players. Like you said, you need bodies. So you let him play, pick up a little bit of form, and then say, all right, you're out. This is it. Start of the summer transfer window. We're moving you on. Thank you for whatever you've done. And then you can start rebuilding after that.
Yeah. But doesn't that cut Amorim's feet under him? Like you have
to
play the time, man. Nobody
sometimes you have to, I guess, like, I know he wants to set his own precedent and set his style, but he's going to have to, he also has to be the adult too and be the manager. Like, I got to do it because like you said, they don't have enough players. So you have to use what you have. Because I don't see any youth kids. Like, he's not bringing anybody from youth academy to play where, like, you see Liverpool, City, and some of these other teams will bring in a youth player just to get them some minutes and maybe try to get a spark. But I haven't seen United do that. They're using the squad, and their squad's pretty young. So, like, they don't really need to do that. But there's not a striker or another wide player in the academy right now that's, showing something, or they haven't attempted to bring him up to, like, say, hey, the writing's on the wall. They did it with Garnacho, and like I said, somebody said in the comments, like, I guess Napoli went in for him already, but he's only, like, still under 20. Like, you shouldn't be getting rid of him and pushing him out of the team so early, because that's somebody you can build around. You just got to tell him, like, hey, kid, the fans are going to get on you. This is the sport. You have to let all that noise out and just put your head down and play. Once you start scoring goals and putting in assists, it goes all the way. Like, everybody has a goldfish mentality when it comes to things.
Yeah, see, I'm a little torn on that. Like, okay, Glenn, I don't know what you think, for example, but I feel like we don't know behind the scenes, right? We kind of assume. But, I mean, I don't know. Rashford wasn't always like this. He was one of the up and I mean, he's one of the few guys I like in freaking United for God's sakes. More for like what he does off the pitch and what he represents and stuff like that, the way he carries himself and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think I get you're already paying him gazillion dollars. He can buy you a bunch of TVs to break and then go out there and do his thing. But at the same time, I just feel like we don't know behind the scenes. We don't know if he is a result of the rot, or if he is the cause of the rot. Because if he's the cause of the rot, he's just gonna affect other players that Emery right now feels like these guys I can keep going to battle with. The other ones I can't. And you put a couple of those guys that are kind of, bloody in the water, it's gonna affect the guys that you thought in the beginning you could ride with. Because it's all about, setting standards and saying, I'm not taking anything less than this.
Yeah,
I know it's not financially smart, but
yeah, well, no, it's a good point. And obviously the problems at United go way, way, way deeper than Marcus Rashford's personality or perceived work ethic or whatever else. Because I think if it's a better environment, then he could still thrive at United. He's shown how good he is. Was it the season 2 years ago? I think he scored a stack of goals. He's clearly a talented player. Nobody's doubting that. And you just wonder if there is any room to kind of rehabilitate him within the side, to turn over a new leaf and say, well, you're going to be here. You are being paid a load of money, but that's not quite the point. The point is you're a quality player and you can help us get points, if you're on the grass. Players like Garnacho are interesting, aren't they? Because he's, been linked, Jamie, with your club, with a couple of others this window, thinking that he might not fit the style, just as you were saying about not getting enough attackers on the pitch. Well, that's actually going to piss off the attackers that are there. It's tricky, isn't it? It's so tough that, a player like Rashford, he has so much to offer, and I wonder if he's just fed up how he hasn't reached his levels performing, right? That's part of it as well, right? He isn't reaching the quality we know he has. He's probably frustrated himself. He's obviously frustrated the kind of atmosphere at the club. I still think he's got a lot to offer. I want to see him succeed, just like you. So I would possibly prefer him to be at another club without all this baggage at this point. There's so much baggage. But at what point, as the manager, do you look at your squad? You could say Marcus Rashford on form would help us get points in the next 15 games. And to what extent do you just use that? And yeah, as Sergi said, right, there's a real fundamental issue of players like, Lingard, Pogba, Sancho, Rashford. There's a hell of a lot of quality there. And yeah, it's off the field stuff that's the real issue, but you've still got to get the most out of your squad. And right now, he's still part of that squad. So it's tough, isn't it? But he's also had some injuries, hasn't he? He hasn't been fully fit either recently. So it's a real tricky one.
Do you consider them as part of the rot or the cause of the rot? Players like Rashford and Garnacho and stuff like that, Ayo?
No, Rashford, no, absolutely not. In fact, I think
it's more like the result of the rot over the last, 5, 6, 7, whatever years.
Yeah, and I think the rot is more about he got paid the big contract too quickly. I think that's if there's anything I can put on him, he got paid the big contract too quickly. Like he wasn't that player. He had that big season where he had 30 goals and like 15 assists, whatever. Like he wasn't that player and he got paid that big contract too quickly. And because of that, right? What eventually now happened is when he has the dip in the form, everybody focuses on him like, you're a star player. You should carry the team, blah, blah, blah. And he wasn't that player. He just wasn't. I think during this period, after Ferguson has left, I think Rashford has been one of our few successes, if you want to call it a success. Or just like, so like, I've always said I don't understand why United fans turn against Rashford. I don't understand it. He's our 12th highest goal scorer in EPL time. He has over 100 goals for United. I don't understand.
He gets a lot. He is the Gomez of United. Like everything, if he's on the pitch, anything that goes wrong, it must be Rashford's fault. It could be the right back's fault, but left winger Rashford is at fault somehow, it seems like.
Correct. So, and I think he suffered from, and maybe this is me making excuses for him because again, I don't know what happened, behind the scenes. He suffered from the fact that he's had a bad 18 months. The new manager is coming in. Ex-manager I was leaving has probably briefed like, oh, he's not doing, what I want, blah, blah, blah. New manager comes in. They've told that in order to do this rebuild, we're going to have to move people out. So he focuses on Rashford. And Rashford he has always not been a good presser. And pressing is, people don't understand, not everybody can press. You know, people need to understand that. Like pressing is not. Rashford has never been good on that, and as Amorim sees that, and I think he just got capitalized on that, and you know that just went south from there. I think that's personally, I think that's just what happened from the whole like off the ball work. He wasn't doing it. Then the whole, I think, when he went to like a nightclub or whatever happened, you know, so it went south from there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, it's hard maybe because I kind of like him, and like BXN says, Garnacho, I can't stand him, but I think he's a talent. He looks less alien and Michael Jacksonish with his hair, regular color I saw this week. But but anyway, let's not even go there. But I'm the last guy with hair. But Jamie, before we move on, I want to ask you, as a team that has like 100 players on the squad over there, Maresca has done a good job, right, between like balancing that or almost like, you know, separating the teams and stuff like that. But is it a bit easier when there is less pressure and less eyes watching compared to, it feels like, United, just because they're United. No offense to Chelsea, but like the expectations were low. When the bar raises, will it get trickier to, like what you're saying, bring a guy in without pissing everybody else off?
I think it will. It's interesting. Maresca did a good job at Chelsea in managing a very, very large squad, but that doesn't mean I like the way or any of the Chelsea fans like the way that Ben Chilwell, Trevor Chalobah, and the like were treated. They were in the bomb squad trading across the street, and but that's ultimately what he had to do to focus on the team he wanted to play, the guys who were involved. You can't train with 40 players. That's not productive. So Maresca did what he had to do, and it sounds like he had support of the structure above him in doing that. And that structure was also very interested in selling the English players who are pure profit in terms of PSR. So I think like Amorim could well do that, and he seemed to like try and do that with Rashford and stamp his authority while not completely exiling him, doing what Maresca did to Madueke and say kind of like, if you're not in, you need to sit on the side, but you can come back when you're ready. I'm just really thankful Chelsea aren't in the market for Rashford. He's one of those players that I think we would try and buy like Sancho and find out that he is exactly what I thought he is, the average winger.
I think depends on the type of player. We were talking about this. I think as well that he would do great in like Serie A or something like that.
Absolutely. I don't think he's a terrible player, but you look at, Chelsea have let a bunch of players go to Serie A and they perform really well. Pulisic has been one of the better players in Serie A for the past couple of seasons, and he was no world beater at Chelsea. So Rashford's career is not over. It may be over at United, it would seem. He announced that, but if it's over, it may as well be over. Whether it's from a loan that turns into a permanent move, I think he's still in what would be considered the prime of his career. It's time to get on with it and move and start somewhere else.
Yeah, that's the thing. It does feel like Rashford is done over there, right? And if you're going to break up, well, we're going to keep going on more dates. Might as well, just like, separate and go our own way. And isn't it better to pick up some of the thing and let him go, at least get rid of the headache? That's why when I was asking you earlier, I figured like getting rid of the headache would be an addition, but you'd rather have him. Do you think there's a way that he sticks around and changes his ways kind of a thing, or just because get your money's worth? Oh, your mic is off, I think.
Sorry. For me to be clear, I would rather Rashford leaves, right? I think it's come to that point, like the separation should happen for his own best and for United's best, right? Best interest. However, what I'm saying is if you cannot get to move him, what I don't want come February 1, Rashford just sits on the bench like from February 1 to the end of the season. And like that would just be horrible. Waste of money, waste of time, waste of devaluation of him as an asset. I hate using the word asset, but like his value just goes down. So I do not want that personally. So that's what I'm saying. If you cannot move him on, please reintegrate him back to the squad. Just bring him back.
So as he says, really think there was too much. I don't think so. I think he was a really good player. I think it goes back to what I was saying. Maybe he doesn't fit a lot of the mold about. Maybe he's not as suitable for the new age forwards where they have to press from the top and stuff like that. Maybe it's just a matter of like the systems that the new managers have don't fit, or the new managers are not willing to come up with a system that's going to make up for this thing. It's not like Mo is a pressing machine. He has been pressing more this year, but like in the years past when Klopp was here, we didn't say, Mo, you're not pressing, set your ass down. It was basically come up with a way, well, you know what, Mo's not going to come back. Hendo, you're going to have to cover this right hand side with Trent kind of thing. And that's what you make do. I think that's what happens when you constantly change managers, though. It's just like, like everybody is trying to implement the system and set their standards and stuff. But
and more importantly, just to add, it's just Mo is a superstar, right? You can do that for a superstar using NBA or American sports then. When you have a superstar, you can let him do whatever he wants. Everybody covers for him. Because Mo consistently puts superstar numbers for 8. Rashford was never that. Rashford was just a good player, never a superstar.
Wasn't he like a superstar of the future though for like United? Am I like, you know what I mean? Like at one
when he first came onto the scene, he was like, he showed promise. But then England had the hype. We're like, hey, here's a 17-year-old.
Yeah, potential. But that's potential. He never put up superstar consistent numbers like Mo Salah, right?
It was just potential, and then like you said, it just kind of leveled out, and here we are.
Yeah.
Here we are enjoying it. Tonali's picks. I think I was there last week in Vegas. That could be one of the places I was at, but I didn't see Tonali over there. But he's there putting his bets. It's time to put our money down with him. It's that time of week where we do Tonali's picks. Let's start with you, Jamie. Here are the fixtures for next week. I will scroll a little bit down so you can see the last two. Villa, West Ham, Fulham, United's are the games. Where is Tonali's money going?
Tottenham. They might get a result against Leicester. No, in all seriousness, I'm split. I mean, I'm biased. I think Chelsea will get a result against City, probably a draw. Maybe we do him, but really, I actually think Bournemouth will beat Forest.
Okay,
I can see that being 2-1. Bournemouth are very well structured, and I think Forest might start to come down from that cloud 9.
Yeah, that's a good pick actually.
Does that count?
That one does count. Your Chelsea against City hopeful pick. I don't know if that counts, but because you didn't put the total money there, you were like, maybe.
Yeah.
So I'll put your money on Bournemouth for you.
Thank you.
Shay, where's your money going with Tonali over there?
I was definitely looking at that Bournemouth Forest game just because Bournemouth getting the win this week. And like I said, Forest, they gotta come down at one point. You know, they're still confident, but they can't take Bournemouth lightly. So like hopefully that they realize like, don't take this team lightly, and we can just run the table in the game. So I think Bournemouth pulls a 2-1 upset.
Yeah, I think one thing Bournemouth can sure do is score goals, and that's one thing Forest struggles with. So Glenn, what do you have? Brentford beating Palace?
We'll see. I'll take a draw there for sure. I love the Bournemouth pick. I think that's a really smart pick, and that makes a lot of sense with how well they're playing. Can we say without a forward as well? Think about how well they've adapted to 2 of their forwards getting injured and how good Semenyo has been for them all season. I'm going to say Wolves to get a good result against Arsenal. With all the drama and tension around the Cunha, potential transfer, potential not. He's signed an extension with Wolves, and now apparently his head's been turned by Arsenal. Maybe he's going to go somewhere else. It will be very, I guess, almost ironic if after all that kind of tension and stress and all the kind of competing stories about Cunha's move, if he maybe got a goal or 2 and helped Wolves actually beat Arsenal, I think that'd be really fun. And yeah, they weren't amazing. I watched the game, Jamie, yesterday, and Wolves weren't brilliant, but they're better at home, and they do have players that can hurt Arsenal. And I think that's going to be a tricky place for Arsenal to go and get a convincing win.
He says Manchester United may cause an upset and get a draw at Fulham. I mean, I honestly, that's the sad thing. I honestly think Fulham will beat, because Fulham is a good team, actually. I mean, they're a good team overall, and they're going to be home. I don't even know if that's an upset. I don't know if that counts. But are you going to pick United for the upset then, Io?
Oh no. I think to end in a draw. Actually, I think we're actually better away. All this weird thing. But I think to end of the draw, my upset is Man City Chelsea. I think Man City is going to destroy Chelsea.
So you were actually seeing Chelsea as a favorite going into that thing?
Yeah, that's what everybody. I mean, like they are both Man City, right? They've had a better season than them so far. I actually think Actually, I think Man City is going to like lay down mark on this one. This is one of the games we're going to watch. Like, oh shit, oh damn, looks like City's back. I think that's what's going to happen. I think this game will get like 3-0 or 3. Like it's going to be a beatdown. I really think so. That's what mine is.
Chelsea is going to beat City. I think City beats Chelsea as well. Yeah. I think they're more established. They know what needs to get done, and if they can finish, and I don't see Chelsea coming back if City starts scoring and stuff like that. But you never know. That should be like an interesting watch. Hopefully, I'll be watching that after Liverpool beat Ipswich and Glenn's bet pays off as Glenn is collecting cash. Hopefully, Arsenal will lose points to Wolves. I'm actually going to go with Southampton. So I'm taking the big odds over here, baby. I'm taking Southampton. Newcastle away is not the same. So I think Southampton gets something out of that game. So I'm going to go with Southampton getting some points because Newcastle is a different animal away than they are at home. Well, that's it for us this week. I hope you guys like the show. Hit the like, thumbs up, and all that kind of good stuff. If you have not subscribed yet, what the hell is wrong with you? Hit that subscribe, follow button, and then we'll be back next week. Same time, same place to talk more Premier League. Take care, everybody.